This is Forensic Bible Study by ChristoverChurch, where we put church teachings under investigation. We examine the Greek, Hebrew, and cultural environment of the region. In today's teaching, women should be silent in church. The verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 14, 34, and 35. The verse to consider, 1 Corinthians 11 and 5. The cultural environment, Dionysian worship. So will this teaching survive the investigation? Let's take a look. Women should be silent in churches. Man, I saw a video about this the other day and can't believe that people are still on this. But we're going to see if we can get down to the bottom of it. 1 Corinthians 14, 34. Bam. Okay. Women should remain silent in the churches. They are not allowed to speak, but must be in submission, as the law says. See what old King James got to say about it. Let your women keep silent in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also says the law. Okay, so one of the more important things to do whenever you're trying to do a little research is to look at the original language the Bible was written in. And for the New Testament, that is the Greek. So women, nothing to see here, are to be silent, to keep silent, keep secret, okay, in the churches. Ecclesia. Ecclesia is not what we know what church is today. Whenever you see church, it's a building and all this stuff going on, but an ecclesia is just simply people gathering together. They can be outside, they can be at someone's house, it can be anywhere. So don't think that whenever you see the word church in the Bible, it's not what you're imagining. It's not what we was taught. So they are not permitted to speak, talk, but must be in submission, subordinate to obey. Dang. The law says. All right, not much to see here. Feels like the translation was at least in the ballpark, so that's cool. So let's go to the verse to consider. What's that? 1 Corinthians 11 and 5, I believe it was. 1 Corinthians 11 and 5. Bam. Let's look at the parallel. Parallel. But if every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, it is the same as having her head shaved. The reason why this is interesting is because I would figure it would be hard to pray or prophesy if you were told to be silent. That's already a clue that 1 Corinthians 14, 34, and 35 is probably taken out of context, which happens a lot. Okay, so let's look at the Strongs, see what the Strongs got. And every woman prays or prophesies to foretell events, divine, speak under inspiration. Okay. Head uncovered, unveiled. Unveiled is interesting because women of their region used to wear a veil to distinguish themselves from any other woman running wild in the region. It was a sign of nobility. It was a sign that this woman was faithful, that she had a husband and the kids, that she wasn't available. She wasn't available sexually. She wasn't available to be married or anything. So whenever someone is veiled, a woman is veiled, that means that she off limits, bro. It's like the same as whenever we having our wedding rings on. Somewhat of the same thing. Dishonors, disgrace, or put to blush her head. It is her head was shaved. Just shit. Okay. I'll give a little more context on that because there is something to her head was shaved. There's a little bit on that. Also in that region, this was something that was going on. All right, so the translations, like I said, seem to be in the ballpark, and that's close enough. That's as good as we can get for the most times. But sometimes these verses be so mistranslated that it's so crazy, especially in the King James version of the Bible. So what was going on in the region? Paul is in the city of Corinth. This is an actual city. A lot of people don't understand that. Sometimes, whenever you're reading the books, the letters that Paul wrote, he's writing to people in certain cities. And in this particular one, he was writing to the city of Corinth. So what was going on in the city of Corinth? Bam. Dionysius was going on in the city of Corinth. Dionysius was the god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation. Bringer of divine inspiration, represents both civilization, wine, culture, and untamed nature. His worship spread throughout Greece and the Roman world. The female followers were called Maenads, known for ecstatic dancing, music, and frenzied rituals. Experienced divine possession, mania, seeing Dionysus as their liberator, often depicted with flowing hair, animal skin, and vines. See right here? Often depicted with flowing hair. The women of that region used to veil up. They used to put veils on. They didn't just let their hair hang low. So this is already a clue that Paul may have been addressing this. But we're going to continue. Bam. This is a little chart I put together comparing what was going on in the Dionysian cult and what the scripture said, what Paul was addressing. So we got Dionysus was the god of mania. Ecstatic trances were seen as divine possession. Self-control was believed to be suspended by the gods. They believed that the closer you get to being out of control or experiencing an out-of-body experience was the way that you can connect with the god. And in this case, Dionysus. But here's Paul addressing it. This is what I believe Paul is addressing. Let me just make that clear. 1 Corinthians 14:32. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. So this means that you're not out of control. Whenever you experience something, whenever you get a revelation or whatever it is you're getting as a prophet, you are still within control. You're not out of your mind. You're not out of control. And then we got Dionysian gatherings often included many shouting, singing, and crying out simultaneously. And here's 1 Corinthians 14:31. For ye may all prophesy one by one, that all may learn and all may be comforted. Let all things be done decently and in order. See, another clue that maybe Corinthians 14:34 was taken out of context, was that it says, "For ye may all prophecy one by one." It's talking about men and women. So Paul is essentially trying to give them directions on how to conduct whatever service they're having. Not all the time it was about teaching. Sometimes it was about a public offering or whatever. They would bring together all the offerings of the region, and then anybody who needed something can come up and get it. But in this particular instance, he's trying to tell them how to conduct themselves whenever and for this particular assembly. So we got inspired utterances in the Dionysian cult were accepted as divine without testing. So they were just saying whatever. Truth was assumed. They assumed that they was telling the truth. And that's what a lot of y'all do in church. I'm going to leave them church folks alone before they get mad at me. 1 Corinthians 14:29. Let the prophet speak 2 or 3, and let the other judge. So Paul wanted, if a prophet or somebody was prophesizing on stage, he wanted the other prophets to sit there and judge what they were saying, to see like, is this real, is this legit, or you just rambling off some stuff. And Paul, again, this is him trying to show them how to conduct themselves in this type of environment, because they were used to wilding out. And then we go to revelations and inspired speech flowed freely with little regard for others already speaking. They was talking over each other. Everybody had something to say, and they wanted to say it all at the same time. And then we go here to 1 Corinthians 14:30. If anything be revealed to another that sitteth by, let the first hold his peace. See, he's trying to say, hey, when somebody is up here prophesizing, just hang back a little bit, let him do his thing. And then whenever it's your turn to speak, you can speak. Everybody can speak in the ecclesia. It's not just one person behind the podium and everybody else just got to sit silently. In Dionysian rites, women, the Maeonides, were vocal participants, singing, crying out, and leading ecstatic expressions. And here's this is the one we started off with, 1 Corinthians 14:34 and 35. Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for a woman to speak in church. Again, this would seem like a contradiction because he just gave instructions on how women should prophesize. And this is what I'm saying. I believe that he's addressing those women that was used to wilding out, and that's how they connect with the God. So whenever they come into the ecclesia that Paul was trying to establish there, they were more than likely getting up on stage, unveiling, and doing all these other type of things that they would do out when they was in the woods trying to connect with Dionysius. Okay. So then we got Christian women were to pray and prophesy with their heads covered as a sign of reverence and order. In Dionysian worship, female devotees, Maeonides, would unveil, loosen their hair, and remove coverings as a signal of entering ecstatic trances. And this is 11:5. But every woman that prayeth or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, for that is even all one as if she were shaven. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. The reason why he's saying this is because, like I said, wearing the veil was symbolic for a noble woman, a faithful woman, someone who's living right, trying to do right in the world. It used to be a punishment for women if they committed adultery, if they were living a promiscuous life, they would have their veil taken off and their hair would run wild, or they would have their hair shaven. And this was a sign that this woman either committed adultery, or she was just promiscuous, or she was sexually available. This is not the perception that Paul wanted when people was passing by the ecclesia and they didn't want to look inside and see a woman who had her hair down and she was screaming, yelling, dancing, and all this other type of stuff. He didn't want to give people the impression that he had something else going on over there, because there was a sign of a floozy back in those days. So we got Dionysian worship was often chaotic, loud, and uncontrolled, reflecting the belief that the god brings madness and breaks social boundaries. 1 Corinthians 14:33. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Again, this is why it's important to look at the Greek. This is why it's important to look at the Hebrew. This is why it's important to look at what was going on in that region. Just imagine you text me WYD, and I text you back, I'm out here eating, getting my bread up. Now just imagine 2,000 years from now, someone discovers that text exchange and they don't speak English because it's a dead language now. Nobody speaks English no more. 2,000 years from now, how many words do you think that they would probably get right? Probably not a lot. The only way they're gonna get some words right is if they go back and look at English. They get a general understanding of how people communicated with each other. They got to understand that we used to talk with each other with acronyms. We used to talk with each other with slang. Money can mean a bunch of different things. Bread can be money, cheese can be money, dineros, pesos, whatever can be money. So just imagine if you're trying to take this at face value. That's why I don't like when people say that. That's why I don't like when people say you got to take the Bible at face value. You're probably going to get a lot of stuff wrong. Just like someone would 2,000 years from now, trying to translate that text exchange. If they just read it at face value, they're going to completely miss the point. And this happens a lot with the Bible. So it's very important. You have to understand, you have to look at all this stuff. I know it's a little tedious. It's a little time consuming, but if you want to know it, it's available to know it. All this stuff, all this stuff was available for me to understand, for me to read it. So that's why I kind of took you through the process on what I usually do when I don't understand something about the Bible. It takes some digging. It takes some digging. So, should women be silent in church? We looked at the Greek. Translation was in the ballpark. We looked at the cultural environment, and some of the women of the region worshiped Dionysius in an untamed and out of control fashion. This is how they connected with the god. We looked at the text, and Paul was seemingly addressing this issue. So does this teaching survive the investigation? Nope. Paul gave instructions for how women should pray and prophesy. It would be hard to do this if they were commanded to be silent. I believe 1 Corinthians 14:34-35 was indeed taken out of context. But thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.